In April 2017, I went on a month-long backpacking trip with my brother and a friend of ours around the beautiful and breathtaking country of the Philippines. This is still, to this day, one of the best things I've ever done, and I recommend everyone to seriously look into traveling the Philippines. I have another video about why you should travel the Philippines, which I will put in the description, but today I want to tell you how to travel the Philippines. This was the first backpacking trip we had ever been on, so this is everything we learned, from planning to actually being on the ground in the Philippines. I'll start by answering some frequently asked questions, throw in a few extra things you need to know, then I'll break down exactly where we went, where we stayed, and the activities we did there. That way, if you want to either follow the path we took or put parts of it into your own itinerary, you can easily do that. Okay, let's get started. First, some frequently asked questions. Is it expensive to travel the Philippines? No. If you're from the Western world, the Philippines is very affordable. You can also haggle for most things in markets and places like that. But don't be so worried about it that you become insulting. What may be a small amount of money to you could be a great help to someone else. What's the best time of the year to travel the Philippines? The dry season is between November and May, with temperatures being high during March and April. We went during April. It was hot but manageable, for us at least, and it only rained for an entire day, maybe once. Is it safe? Some parts are safer than others, but for the most part, yes, it's very safe. Most people will tell you to stay out of the South and Mindanao region, but I would do some research into which areas your government says are safe, not safe, and why, then make an informed decision on which areas to travel to. All this information can be found with a simple Google search. Is there a language barrier? If you speak English, no. Everyone speaks very good English over there. We never once had any problems. They also speak Tagalog, which is closer to Spanish. If you know Spanish, you still won't automatically understand everything, but it won't be as hard if you want to try to learn a little bit of Tagalog before you head out. What's the best way to get around in the Philippines? The Philippines is connected in a way that I could have never even fathomed coming from the Midwest of America. It's extremely easy and cheap to get anywhere you want to go from anywhere you're at in the Philippines. Use buses, planes, tricycles, ferries, pump boats, jeepneys, rent bikes, take taxis, or if you're in the city, use Uber. This will save you trouble and money. If you aren't sure how to get somewhere, just ask your hotel or hostel to point you in the right direction, and people will absolutely go out of their way to help you get to where you need to be. At least they did for us. Do I need any vaccinations before traveling to the Philippines? There are some you may need, but it depends on what you already have and where you're coming from. I would Google it though and look into getting any you need sooner rather than later, as this can end up being a big hidden cost if you need to get very many. How do I make my phone work? Make sure you have a phone that is unlocked so you can put different SIM cards in it. In the airport or a mall, look for either Smart or Globe. These are the main phone carriers in the Philippines. We used Globe and had decent service in cities, but once you leave the city, it'll be very hit or miss. You can also do what I personally did and just use apps when you have Wi-Fi. It may not be the best, but you can find Wi-Fi all over the place. You might be surprised. Now let's talk about some things you need to know before leaving. Look out for terminal fees. Most ports have more than one thing you need to pay for. You will do a lot of waiting. This isn't a good or bad thing. It's just something you need to account for. You'll have to wait for most everything, so just sit back and enjoy it. Bring only a carry-on. This may be hard for some people, but trust me, you do not want to be lugging around more than one bag for many reasons. Download maps.me. This map app lets you download maps and use offline while traveling. I think you can do the same with Google Maps, but we used this app for our trip and absolutely loved it. If you want to plan every little part of your trip out before you leave, that'll work great here. If you want to just show up and figure it out, that'll also work great here. The Philippines is set up in a way that both are realistic options. Just decide which is less stressful for you and go for it. Rain will often come out of nowhere, be a full-on downpour, then stop and be sunny and beautiful for the rest of the day. The Filipino people all seem to be extremely nice. Talk to them, make friends, or at least ask them for advice on places to visit and things to do in each area. Watch out for scams. I recommend Googling common scams in areas you'll be staying in, but also don't assume everyone is trying to scam you. Most are not. Use ATMs to take out money. There will be some fees, but it isn't that bad if you take out enough to get by for at least a week at a time. Use ATMs at malls, banks, and airports to get money before you leave cities, as you may not have another chance until you get to your next city. We booked most everything before we left, and Agoda made it very easy. You can also look into Airbnb or hostels, but we personally just did hotels for this trip. Now let's break down exactly what we did step by step. When you fly into the Philippines, you will more than likely land in Manila, which is the capital of the Philippines and most densely populated city on Earth. When we arrived, we had the next flight out of there to Cebu, so I can't speak at all to what to do if you're planning to stay in the city for much time, though most people don't recommend spending much time there. After flying for about an hour, we landed in Cebu. Before leaving the airport, we found working ATMs and got some spending money. I recommend you do this so you start out with at least something in your pocket to pay for taxis and hotels. I also recommend trying to find somewhere that can break down your bigger bills into smaller ones quickly, as a lot of times taxis and Ubers cannot give you change for the 1,000 peso bills the ATMs give out. Next, we found a booth for GOLBE, and they helped us set up a cell phone to be able to use for our trip. Just look for booths that say GOLBE or SMART on them. Shouldn't be too hard to find. From there, we took a taxi to South Pole Central Hotel. There will be links in the description to all the hotels we stayed in. We took a taxi, but you can also take an Uber. Personally, I recommend taking Uber if you can. Our hotel was nice for us, nothing fancy, and the rooms were not huge, but we had no complaints, and I would recommend it. We spent the rest of the day exploring the city, trying Jollibee for the first time, and ended the day by taking an Uber to the SM Seaside Mall. I really recommend you do this if you like malls at all. It was the biggest mall I had ever been to, and there are a lot of fun things to do there. One other thing a lot of people do is go to the Crown Plaza and ride the Edge Coaster, which is a roller coaster on the roof of the hotel, but we didn't end up doing this. The next day, we had an Uber take us to the ferry terminal and took a ferry to Tagbilaran City on the island of Bohol. Guys, Bohol is awesome. I highly recommend it as your first island to explore in the Philippines. Once in Tagbilaran, we asked around until we found a ride to the beautiful Alona Beach. There's a lot to do on the beach itself, with nice places to eat and shop right along the beach. We stayed in the Bohol Sea Breeze Cottages and Resort and really enjoyed it. It's an easy 2-minute walk from the beach. We spent all of the first day just enjoying the beach. The morning of our second day in Bohol, we went down to the beach and asked around until we found somewhere we could rent bikes for the day to explore the island. We spent 400 pesos to rent them. I'm not sure if this is a good price, but it's only around $8 US. I recommend you take it kind of easy if you've never done something like this before, as some of the roads you'll take can get pretty curvy and hilly. That being said, it isn't that hard to figure out. We had never ridden bikes before and had it figured out in 10 or 20 minutes. We used the bikes to get to Labak Church, which I really do recommend stopping and looking inside, the man-made forest, the Tarzar Sanctuary, which is a really cool stop if you want to see tiny little monkeys you can't see anywhere else, and the Chocolate Hills, a breathtaking landscape like nothing else you've ever seen, guaranteed. In all, this trip took only a few hours. I recommend wearing sunblock as you will burn. We did, badly, even with sunblock on. To find your way there, I recommend asking which way to head from the people you rent the bikes from and using maps.me to help you out. After this, we spent another day and a half on Alona just enjoying the beach. The only other thing we did was the Firefly tour, which I would honestly say you could skip. To be fair, it was raining on us a bit, so decide for yourself, but it wasn't anything amazing. For us at least. Once our time on Bohol was finished, we made our way back to Cebu and stayed another night in South Pole Central Hotel. The next day we had a taxi take us to Molbol, which I don't recommend doing. Just have them take you to the bus station and take a bus. The only reason we didn't do this is because we were still figuring things out, and this was our first big trip ever. In Molbol, we stayed in the Marcosas Cottages Resort, which I cannot recommend highly enough. We had a house to ourselves with a private walkway to our own little beach for only around $30 a night, 10 split between us. Honestly, I wish we would have spent much more time in Molbol. We spent the first day exploring and enjoying the beautiful turquoise water. We also asked around about canyoneering at Kawasan Falls. This turned out to be one of the best things we would do on this entire trip. The next morning, we were taken to a canyoneering company and taken into one of the most beautiful places I have ever been. If you don't do this, you're making a mistake. The next day was all travel. We had to get from Molbol to Mambukal Mountain Resort near Bacolod. This is a long trip to try to do in one day. It may not be a bad idea to stop and stay the night somewhere halfway. We made it work by talking to the guy who took us up to the canyoneering place the day before, and he got us started by making sure we were on the first ferry to Negros. From there, we got a lot of help from other people getting on buses and finally made it to Mambukal by the end of the day. We spent the next 3 days in Mambukal. Here we enjoyed the different vibe the forest and mountain area had compared to the beach life. We went into a butterfly sanctuary, swam in the little river that ran through the resort, relaxed in hot springs, hiked up a very beautiful path with multiple waterfalls to gaze at, got to the top where we hung out with locals jumping into the deep part of the water, and hiked even higher up to a small village. Very cool experience, much different from the beach, but if you're into that type of stuff, I really do recommend you stop at Mambukal, though you can probably see everything in 2 days instead of 3 like we did. From Mambukal, we next made our way to Iloilo and stayed at the Circle Inn for 3 nights. I love the Circle Inn and Iloilo in general, but this part could be skipped as we used these 3 days as a break from doing crazy things to just relax in the pool and eat bad for a few days. We had a few options for where to go next, such as heading up to Isla de Gigantes, but we heard good things about Guimaras, so we walked 5 minutes from the Circle Inn to the port and took a 20 or 30 minute pump boat ride over. When we arrived, we were told the beach we wanted to visit was all booked up and that the only beach that may have rooms was Guisi. So we took a jeepney to the beach and managed to find a room, but I recommend booking hotels for this island in advance because we did have a hard time. That being said, Guimaras ended up being one of the massive highlights from the trip. We never left the beach of Guisi, but there was plenty to do. Swimming around, visiting old 19th century Spanish ruins, and hanging with locals jumping off a huge rock into the ocean. There was so much to do on just this one beach, and I really wish we had planned more time on this island to be able to visit the other beaches. Following Guimaras, we took a boat back to Iloilo and spent all day on buses getting to the top of the island before taking another boat over to the island of Boracay, which, if I had to guess, is probably the most popular island in the Philippines. We stayed in Tonglan Beach Resort and absolutely loved it. It wasn't directly on the beach, but it was only a 5-minute walk to get there. Once on the beach, there are endless things to do and see. You will never be bored in Boracay. That being said, I do want to stress how popular this beach is. There will be people everywhere. I've never seen such huge crowds on a beach before. There's definitely a party vibe and the nightlife is strong. If that isn't your thing, then definitely avoid Boracay. From talking to people, it seems some people love it and some hate it. Doesn't seem to be much in between. Personally, we loved it. After a crazy time in Boracay, we took a bus back to Iloilo and spent a couple of nights relaxing in the Circle Inn again before flying to Puerto Princesa. Once we landed, we were talked into taking a van up to El Nido. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but the van took 7 hours and was absolutely one of the worst parts of this trip. The roads up to El Nido are very curvy, and even if you don't get motion sickness normally, you probably will on this trip. All of us did. I do know it is possible to fly straight into El Nido, so maybe look into that. Nonetheless, once we got to El Nido, it was all worth it. Do not go to the Philippines and skip El Nido. It's one of the most beautiful and unspoiled places on earth. We stayed in the Ingrid's Inn Hotel Resort, and just a tiny hop, skip, and jump away from our balcony, which is right up there, is where we're gonna have breakfast. Free breakfast. And we still have the amazing view. It was a great place to stay, and I totally recommend it. Without a doubt, the best view of the trip. I recommend looking into taking some tours around the islands and going to see things like Big Lagoon. We also rented kayaks one day, which I would highly recommend. Sadly, halfway through our time in El Nido, 2 of us got sick and were stuck in the room for the rest of our time there. We have heard great things about Nacpan Beach. Even though we didn't get to go ourselves, I recommend looking into it. We ended the trip by taking the horrible van ride back to Puerto Princesa and stayed at the Deep Forest Garden Hotel. This place was actually really cool, and it looked like there's a ton of fun stuff to do and see around Puerto Princesa, so I recommend doing a Google search on things to do in the area. Sadly, I was still very sick at this point, so I don't have any personal recommendations. That's it. The next day we got on our plane, headed home. Going to the Philippines is still one of the best things I've done in my life, and I recommend it to anyone. Just go at a pace that feels comfortable to you. There's a link in the description to a written out version of our itinerary if you want to follow it. It also includes some extra tips to things we thought of doing but didn't make it to. Whether you follow our itinerary or not, I really hope you enjoy your trip to the Philippines. Please comment below if you're planning a trip, or if you went on one and used this video to help you plan. I would love to hear what you thought of your time there. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.